Some 1,300 Senegalese fighters fought for France against the Nazis, but on December 1st, 1944, upon their return to Senegal, anywhere from over 24 to 300 of them were murdered in cold blood, not by the Germans, but by the very French forces that they had fought alongside during the war. It was swept under the rug for decades, preventing victims and their relatives from any form of closure or even recognition from the French government. Marie Thomas-Penette and François-Xavier Destors' documentary Thiaroye 44 is one of the first to explore this event. They join me on set now for Perspective. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
So in the documentary, you follow three young artists, Maggie, Babacar, and Aisha, along with an historian. Why did you choose this format to look at the event through the eyes of these three artists?
Well, actually, we've been to Thiaroye a few times during the years. And we met a lot of historians. We went to the Museum of Armed Forces. And we never really found a real dialogue. But when we went to Thiaroye, we went to high school. And there we met these young people, maybe 15, 16 years old. And they were like haunted by this story. They told us, please, do something, talk about it, make it seen. And they were like, they live with this history every day. Every day they go to school and they might be walking on the bodies of these soldiers. They don't know where these soldiers are buried, and they live with it. They hear about it every day. They see it on the walls. You can see murals in the streets. You can see I don't know, the pharmacy is called 44, everything is called 44 because 1944 is part of their lives. So that's where we found that there was a story really to tell, because the archives, the details of history are very difficult to explain. We even tried, and we did it with the historian who's called Martin Moore, who is in the documentary. But the story still lives because of these youngsters and because of these three artists that we met. They grew up there. They are like, it's part of them, and they have to express their anger. They have to express their frustration, and their creativity goes through that.
So before we talk about precisely what happened in December 1944, can you guys start by telling us who these tirailleurs were and why they were returning to Dakar?
Well, they were former war prisoners, actually. They went to France in 1940, to fight. And they actually fought. And they were made prisoners by the Germans, but the Germans forbid them to be prisoner on their own territory. So they were prisoners in France. And at some point during the war, they were even guarded by French soldiers. So you can imagine the situation. And some of them took actively part in the underground activities of resistance. At the end of the war, they escaped from this prisoners' camp and went to engage into resistance, and they fought for France. And at some point, at the end of 1944, the French officers told them to go away, to go back home, in a sense to get rid of them. So they could not celebrate the victory somehow. So yeah, that's it. They were former prisoners of war.
So now to get to the massacre then, it was swept under the rug for decades. There was eventually an official version, but that official version has now been thrown into question. Can you tell us what that official version was of how these soldiers ended up killed and what historians are now saying probably happened?
Well, actually, this story, the archives that we can find are documents and reports written by the French military, the French officers who were there. But they were all written after the events, so we can think that they definitely covered up what happened there. Everything in every report we find different numbers, different versions of the story. So There's one report which says that there were 35 soldiers killed. Another one that says there were 70. We don't know what happened between 35 and 70, but mostly the historians who really worked through the archives can tell us now that there were approximately between 300 and 400 killed. They say that because the archives show that the cover-up was also in the ship trip they made from France to Dakar. There was a stay in Casablanca for 1 day. And there, one report says that 300 of them didn't want to go back to the ship, and they stayed in Casablanca. And another report says nothing happened that day at Casablanca, the very officer who was with the Thiaroye that day. So we can find there that 300 soldiers disappeared. But there are also a lot of other details, other places where we find so many incoherencies and that we know that all that is a cover-up. Yeah.
You have to understand that to cover up this story, the French army decided to make it mutiny. Okay, so they could justify why they shot at these soldiers, but the archive are showing that they were not armed. So, and some archive also are saying that they were even demobilized. I mean, they were not even soldiers anymore. So that makes it a crimes against humanity. So what you have to understand is that the French army actually killed their own soldiers. Then they arrested some of them, the survivors, among the survivors. They judged them. They dishonored them. And then for decades, they lie about it. So now what is really hard to accept for us and for the young generation is the fact that we have children or grandchildren of these victims who still don't know where their father or grandfather are buried. We still don't know how many people were killed. Nothing is done to rehabilitate the memory of these men.
And if my memory serves me correctly, François Hollande was the first and only president to officially speak of this massacre, although he didn't describe it as such. Why do you think that French governments have been so hesitant to simply recognize what happened?
I don't know. I would love to know. I don't know. But what is sure is that if they recognize the crime, they will have to pay. They will have to apologize. They will officially, and they would have to accept to treat equally all these soldiers who served France. Not only these tirailleurs who were massacred in this atrocity, but also all the soldiers who from the French West African countries and other colonies who fought for France. These soldiers are not treated equally as the French soldiers. And it's a question of justice. And Thiaroye 44, Thiaroye 44 is a symbol of this injustice.
Marie Thomas-Penette and François-Xavier Destors, I'm so sorry, that's unfortunately all we have time for. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
And of course, as a reminder to our viewers, the full documentary Thiaroye 44, produced for France 24 and Public Sénat, will air in full on France 24 English on this Saturday, May 14th at 9 o'clock p.m. So do join us for that if you're able to.